You know that feeling when you walk into a room thinking you're the smartest person there, only to realize you've walked straight into a trap you set for yourself. That is exactly what happened in a London courtroom recently. Prince Harry sat there looking smug, confident, and ready to take down the British tabloid empire. He thought he was the hunter, but in a twist that Hollywood writers would reject for being too unbelievable, his own lawyer handed the opposing counsel the loaded weapon that would destroy him. And that weapon was his own book Spare. The very memoir Harry bragged about the book he claimed was his absolute truth. The record-breaking bestseller that lined his pockets with millions was suddenly being wielded against him with surgical precision. Watching the color drain from his face as his own published words were read back to him to contradict his sworn testimony wasn't just awkward, it was the most satisfying moment of karmic justice we have witnessed in years. But what happened next didn't just threaten his lawsuit, it threatened his entire future. Let's be absolutely clear about the scene that unfolded because it is crucial to understand the magnitude of this disaster. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, a man who has spent the last few years branding himself as the ultimate victim of media dishonesty, took the stand. He was under oath. He looked the court in the eye and categorically denied that certain conversations had ever taken place. He was emphatic. He was sure. He essentially called the reports fabrications. And then, with what must have been barely concealed delight, the Daily Mail's legal team simply opened a copy of Spare. They didn't need secret witnesses or hidden tapes. They just needed page numbers. They proceeded to read passages where Harry himself described in vivid publishable detail the exact conversations he had just claimed never happened. You literally cannot make this stuff up. The man wrote a $20 million confession and then apparently forgot what was in it. The irony here is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Harry spent months on his book tour sitting across from interviewers like Anderson Cooper and Tom Bradby, insisting that every single word in Spare was accurate. He claimed he had fact-checkers. He claimed this was the definitive historical record. Well, congratulations, Harry. The Daily Mail's lawyers believed you. They believed you so much that they used your definitive truth to prove you were potentially lying to a judge. Sources inside the room described the moment as catastrophic. One observer noted that Harry looked like a man who just realized he had been playing checkers while everyone else was playing three-dimensional warfare. Another insider mentioned that Harry seemed genuinely shocked, which is perhaps the most damning part of all. Did no one on his high-priced legal team bother to cross-reference his testimony with his own autobiography? Or is Harry so lost in his own narrative that he can no longer distinguish between his truth, the actual truth, and the legal truth? But if you think getting caught in a lie about a book was bad, wait until you hear about the specific conversation that sealed his fate. This wasn't just a minor slip-up. It was a fundamental contradiction that exposes his entire strategy. The specific moment that may have torpedoed Harry's entire case involved a conversation with his ex-girlfriend, Chelsea Davy. The details are fascinating. When questioned about discussions with Chelsea during a trip to Botswana, Harry was firm. He denied that certain private exchanges had taken place. He insisted the media had fabricated the details, positioning himself once again as the target of journalistic invention. Then came the counterpunch. The defense team calmly read aloud from Spare, where Harry describes those exact conversations by a campfire in Botswana. The exchanges he denied having were right there in black and white, verified by his own hand. For those of you who aren't familiar with how high-stakes litigation works, let me explain why this is a nightmare scenario. In a civil case like this, your credibility is everything. You are asking a judge to believe your version of events over the other side's. When you take the stand and swear to tell the truth, and then your own published writings directly contradict that testimony, you have created a massive blast radius that destroys everything else you say. We are potentially talking about perjury here. Lying under oath isn't a mistake or a memory lapse. It is a criminal offense. And while it is unlikely a prince will be hauled off in handcuffs, the reputational damage is permanent. Judges remember. The legal record remembers. It brings to mind the infamous Agatha Christie trial with Rebecca Vardy. In that case, Vardy took the stand and made claims that were subsequently demolished by her own WhatsApp messages. Her credibility never recovered. Harry now finds himself in an eerily similar position, hoisted by his own petard. He wasn't destroyed by evil tabloids or palace leaks. He was destroyed by his own compulsive need to share every detail of his life for profit. Observers noted that Harry's legal team appeared visibly uncomfortable shuffling papers and avoiding eye contact with their client as the passages were read. They knew the game was up. Harry had walked into court expecting deference because of his title, but instead he received a masterclass in cross-examination. But while his reputation was taking a beating, his bank account was facing an even bigger threat, one that involves a number so large it's hard to comprehend. Let's talk about the financial elephant in the room, because the numbers involved in this vanity project are truly grotesque. The judge himself felt compelled to issue an extraordinary warning regarding the costs. The claimants in this case, including Harry, have already generated an absolutely staggering £40 million in legal costs. £40 million. That is not a typo. That is the kind of money that could fund entire humanitarian operations. It could build schools, provide clean water to developing nations, or fund the actual charities Harry claims to care about. Instead, it has been funneled into lawyers' pockets in what is increasingly looking like a crusade driven by one man's insatiable need for revenge. The judge's warning was not subtle. He made it explicitly clear that if the claimants lose this case, and given Harry's performance, that is a very real possibility, they could be personally liable for a significant portion of those costs. For Harry, this represents an existential financial threat. We have to look at the context of his finances. His Netflix deal is reportedly underperforming and on shaky ground. His Spotify partnership crashed and burned in spectacular fashion, with executives labeling him a grifter. His speaking engagements aren't commanding the fees they once did, and now he faces the possibility of being on the hook for tens of millions of pounds in legal fees. Insiders are describing this as a slow-motion train wreck. One source familiar with the proceedings stated that Harry's team appears to have fundamentally miscalculated the strength of their position. They thought they could bully the tabloids into settling. Instead, the tabloids fought back armed with Harry's own inconsistencies. This is the danger of surrounding yourself with yes men. Harry likely had people telling him he was right, that he was a hero, that he was going to win. No one told him the hard truth, that dragging this into court would expose him to financial ruin. And speaking of ruin, the hypocrisy of how Harry made his money versus what he is suing for is a contradiction that the defense team exploited ruthlessly. The absolute audacity of Prince Harry complaining about the commercialization of his private life would be hilarious if it weren't so breathtakingly hypocritical. There he sat in that courtroom, lamenting how the Daily Mail had exploited his personal experiences for profit. He argued that they turned his pain into a product, that they treated his life as a commodity. And he said all of this while the evidence of his own massive commercial empire sat right there in the public record. Let's do the math again. Spare his tell-all memoir that spared absolutely no one reportedly earned him a $20 million advance. His Netflix deal, the one where he and Meghan complained about privacy while filming themselves constantly, was worth approximately $100 million. His Spotify deal brought in another $20 million. Every single dollar of that wealth was generated by selling his personal experiences, his family secrets, and his private pain to the highest bidder. One commentator absolutely nailed this contradiction. They observed that no newspaper on earth has cashed in on Prince Harry's private life more effectively than Prince Harry himself. He isn't a victim of the commercialization of privacy. He is its most successful CEO. But the hypocrisy goes deeper than just the money. During the trial, a detail emerged that was truly extraordinary. It was revealed that Harry had authorized a journalist to speak on his behalf during his legal battle against the very paper he was suing. He literally used the media as a communications vehicle for his own messaging when it suited him. This is the definition of wanting it both ways. He wants to destroy the press in court for violating his privacy, while simultaneously using the press to leak his own narratives. The defense hammered this point home. They argued that Harry cannot credibly claim to be a victim of media exploitation while being the media's most willing collaborator when the price is right. Harry's face, during this line of questioning, told the whole story. He had no answer, because there is no answer. You cannot sell your privacy for $150 million and then sue someone else for quoting you. But of course, Harry had an excuse for why he had to do it this way. He claimed the men in gray suits at the palace prevented him from suing earlier. Unfortunately for him, that excuse was about to be demolished by his own brother's actions. One of the central pillars of Harry's lawsuit has been the assertion that he was prevented from taking legal action against the media while he was a working royal. He painted a picture of himself as a prisoner of the never complain, never explain policy. He claimed he was shackled, forced to suffer in silence while the tabloids printed lies, unable to defend himself because the institution wouldn't allow it. It's a compelling narrative. It positions Harry as a victim of both the media and his own family. It makes him the underdog. There is just one tiny problem. It is demonstrably provably false. Evidence introduced in court showed that Prince William, Harry's own brother, successfully sued media outlets for privacy violations while serving as a working royal. Not once, but multiple times. William and Catherine took legal action against Paris Match and won. They sued Closer magazine and secured damages. They demonstrated repeatedly that the royal family's unofficial policy did not prevent them from seeking justice through the courts when their privacy was genuinely violated. The precedent exists. The evidence is clear. Harry's excuse has been utterly shredded. So what does this mean? It means Harry is either lying about being prevented from suing, or he was so disengaged from his own family's activities that he genuinely didn't know his brother was successfully fighting these battles. Neither option looks good. Sources familiar with royal legal matters have shed light on why William's lawsuit succeeded where Harry's current crusade is flailing. The key difference was discretion. William pursued legal action quietly. He didn't do a press tour. He didn't turn it into a reality show. He let the lawyers do the work. Harry, by contrast, seems constitutionally incapable of doing anything without maximum publicity and drama. One royal insider was blunt. Harry didn't want to sue quietly because quiet victories don't generate headlines. This suggests that Harry's legal battles are less about justice and more about attention. He wants the fight as much as he wants the win. But when the fight started going badly in court, Harry resorted to a tactic that many saw coming. He tried to weaponize his emotions. Then came the tears, and frankly, nobody was buying them. The moment Prince Harry's eyes welled up with emotion should have been a powerful turning point in his testimony. Here was a man so deeply wounded by media intrusion that he could barely speak. It should have been a moment of raw humanity. But there was a glaring issue that everyone in the courtroom immediately noticed. The tears came at the wrong time about the wrong person in a case where the timeline made absolutely no sense. Harry's emotional display centered on Meghan Markle. He choked up describing her suffering, the hate she received, and the toll it took on their relationship. It was touching stuff except for the fact that this specific lawsuit concerns events that largely predated his relationship with Meghan. He was crying about a woman he hadn't even met when many of the alleged privacy violations occurred. It was as if he couldn't resist making everything about the Harry and Meghan versus the world narrative, even when that narrative was irrelevant to the legal claims at hand. He had an opportunity to show genuine emotion about the actual subject of the lawsuit, but instead, he pivoted to Meghan. It felt scripted. It felt like he was playing to the cameras outside rather than the judge inside. Even more suspicious was the timing of the breakdown. The emotional moment didn't happen during the grueling cross-examination by the defense. It happened during questioning from his own lawyer. Allow me to translate that for you. He cried during the easy part. He cried during the softball questions lobbed by his own team. One source described it as literally rehearsed, noting that tears appearing during your own counsel's examination are usually a sign of prepared testimony rather than spontaneous emotion. Journalists in the room were not fooled. Reports described the display as a calculated attempt to generate sympathetic headlines to distract from the disastrous cross-examination. But juries and judges aren't stupid. They can tell the difference between real grief and a performance. Harry's crocodile tears didn't just fail to win sympathy. They confirmed the suspicion that this is a man who views the courtroom as just another stage for his PR campaign. But perhaps the saddest part of this entire spectacle wasn't the bad acting or the legal blunders. It was what was happening outside the courtroom in the quiet moments when the cameras weren't rolling. The most pathetic revelation to emerge from Harry's London visit involves the silence of his family. Sources close to the situation have confirmed that throughout his time in the UK, Harry checked his phone daily, sometimes multiple times a day, to see if Prince William or King Charles had reached out. Spoiler alert, they didn't. The silence from the palace was deafening, and apparently it crushed him. Think about the delusion required here. Harry has spent 3 years publicly attacking his family. He has called them racists, accused them of neglect, written a book exposing their private texts, and filmed documentaries airing their dirty laundry. And yet he sits in London checking his phone like a teenager, expecting them to just call and hang out. It shows a profound disconnect from reality. Harry seems to believe he can fire missiles at his family publicly and still expect a warm welcome privately. The scene at his court appearance made his isolation painfully visible. Usually, a royal appearing in such a high-profile setting would be surrounded by aides, family members, or longtime associates. Instead, Harry found himself sitting with Damien Hurley, Elizabeth Hurley's son, as his most notable companion. Nothing against Damien, but when you are the son of the king and your courtroom support system consists of a celebrity's kid, rather than your own blood relatives, the optics are brutal. It screams loneliness. It screams desperation. It is the visible consequence of burning every bridge in sight. One analyst described Harry's legal crusade as an elaborate cry for help, disguised as a quest for justice. It forces the family to pay attention to him, even if it's negative attention. But the royal family has chosen the one weapon Harry doesn't know how to fight: indifference. They are simply moving on without him. And as he stands there alone, facing financial ruin and public humiliation, you have to wonder if he is finally realizing the cost of his war. The cascading disasters of Harry's courtroom appearance have crystallized something that royal observers have long suspected. We are witnessing a man in the midst of complete self-destruction, and he seems entirely unwilling to stop himself. The financial numbers are terrifying. If he loses this case, the personal liability could wipe out a huge chunk of his remaining liquidity. His entertainment deals are drying up because he has proven to be difficult, litigious, and repetitive. His credibility has been shattered on the witness stand by his own memoir, and his family has completely cut him off. Harry walked into that courtroom thinking he was the hero of the story, finally slaying the dragon of the British press. Instead, he revealed himself to be a man confused by his own narrative, isolated by his own choices, and drowning in a legal quagmire of his own making. He handed his enemies the gun, loaded it with his own book, and then acted surprised when they pulled the trigger. The question now isn't whether Harry will win this case. It's whether he can survive the peace that comes after he inevitably loses the war.